Ohio State faculty, staff, and students are engaged in a wide range of research activities. In fact, central to the mission of the university is that global initiatives must permeate the culture of the entire university. To make this globally expanded Ohio State real, more faculty members are empowered to conduct research in other countries. One aspect of achieving internationalization is developing long-term, multidisciplinary partnerships as determined by a work group from the Office of International Affairs. These partnerships should involve shared research projects, exchanges between faculty and students alike with universities around the world, as well as collaborations among colleges and departments right here at Ohio State. However, the U.S. government regulates the transfer of international information, commodities, technology, and software considered to be strategically important to the U.S. in the interest of national security, economic, and/or foreign policy concerns. This complicated network of federal agencies and interrelated regulations govern exports, collectively referred to as export controls. In brief, export controls regulate the shipment or transfer, by whatever means, of controlled items, software, technology, or services out of the U.S. Let's hear from Dr. Jennifer Usel, a Research Compliance Officer with the Office of Research Compliance.
Well, there are two basic areas that people need to be aware of when thinking about export control issues. The first is more general, and that applies to the community as a whole when you're dealing with certain types of activities like traveling overseas or providing financial assistance to people that are not U.S. citizens or to foreign entities. Those types of activities can trigger export issues, especially when you're dealing with high-tech equipment or providing any sort of financial assistance to someone that might be on one of these blocked or sanctioned lists. The second area that people need to be concerned with is actual research activities in restricted areas, and those are going to be areas that are more high-tech, science and engineering type areas, especially in the engineering, high-performance computing, and some of the high-tech laser, medical laser areas. Well, in terms of export control, I think that most people think about the classic military or defense articles and services, which are definitely areas that would be restricted. But in addition to that, there are a number of basic research areas that are also of interest to the government. They include high-performance computing, strong encryption technologies, so-called dual-use technologies, medical lasers, nuclear technology, chemical and biological weapons technology, select agent and toxin work in the biological areas, space technology, and satellites. Those are the main areas that the government is very interested in protecting. Dual-use technologies are those technologies that are both military and civilian in nature, so they could have a military application. Some common examples of dual-use technologies would be things like the Hummer or a GPS unit, where we now use them very much in the commercial setting, but those were developed as military articles and are so-called dual-use technologies.
Let's hear again from Dr. Usel on how the fundamental research exclusion helps researchers to manage these regulations.
So the fundamental research exclusion is one of the broad-based exclusions that the federal government has put in place to help protect basic research from these export control restrictions. In order to qualify as fundamental research, your research needs to be conducted in a way where it will ordinarily be published out in the open literature, and it can't have any restrictions, publication restrictions or access restrictions, in order to qualify for the fundamental research exclusion. As long as your research does qualify, no export control restrictions would apply to it.
Export controls have the potential to severely limit the research opportunities of university faculty, students, and staff, as well as to prevent international collaboration in certain research areas. Non-compliance with export controls can result in severe monetary and criminal penalties against both an individual as well as the university, and can result in the loss of research contracts, governmental funding, and the ability to export items.
I think for the Ohio State University community, the most common activity is going to be traveling with equipment or even common personal items like laptop computers, cell phones, any of the high-tech equipment, GPS systems. Some of those systems have technologies in them that are restricted and would need to potentially have an export license before you would be able to take that with you overseas.
Do these restrictions apply to any particular countries, or are they more general?
Well, the export control restrictions are very much specific to the item and where you're taking the item. And in most cases, an export license is not required, especially for commercially obtained goods. However, there are 5 countries, the so-called T5, in which exports of any items from the U.S. with you, whether you're taking them to sell them or taking them as your personal belongings, are highly restricted. And that would be Cuba, Iran, Syria, Sudan, and North Korea. In those cases, an export taking any of these types of equipment with you would be would require a license, and in most cases a license would be denied. I think that the members of the Ohio State community need to think about things like international fieldwork, international consulting services that they might be providing, as well as international collaborations with universities and entities overseas. This is going to be incredibly important as the university moves forward with the international gateways and it really pushes the research mission and our international presence in the world. When we have a visiting scholar that's coming here from another country, we're required to determine whether or not that person is on one of these blocked or sanctions lists. These are lists that are put together by the Department of Treasury to provide a listing of people that they've determined could be terrorists or could be associated with terrorist organizations. And so we, as a university, are not allowed to provide any financial assistance to anyone on one of these lists.
We recognize export controls are a complicated area. However, there are resources and individuals at Ohio State to assist you with this process. Researchers may contact the Office of Research Compliance if any of these issues are part of the research plan or project. Assistance is available with obtaining the necessary licenses and/or permissions to continue the work while maintaining adherence to the regulations.